Yeah. So we're glad to have our friend Albert Pellegri has come back again. The prodigal has returned. So we're happy to see Albert back. And
no, I mean, I have to admit, you are very good at what you do.
Oh,
I mean, you have a passion for this.
Thank you.
An innate passion.
I appreciate that. That's very thoughtful. And we have a little group like Mama Kelly. I'm going to invite her to come to the little dinner thing next week. A reminder: next week we'll have our little holiday gathering dinner thing here in lieu of the teaching. So people tuning in on the internet, if you're within driving distance of Miami, you're invited to come next week at 6:30 to this address for a little Christmas Bible study fellowship dinner.
And just prepare to go in for a few years ahead of time, so that when we're gone, we can always go to Southeast Gospel.
Yes.
And look at those episodes.
So we'll have that for next week. But for this week, we're going to finish up our series on Mystery Babylon. And last week was Thanksgiving, so we didn't meet. But 2 weeks ago, we were on Revelation chapter 17, and we talked about Mystery Babylon. And Ingrid, what did we kind of tried to synopsize what Mystery Babylon was, and what would you say if somebody said, well, what is this Mystery Babylon? It's very confusing.
The government system, it's the Roman Catholic Church, it's Babylon.
Fast forward 2,000 years.
There you go. I would say, the little summary that I gave in one of the outlines I wrote, the Antichrist outline. I'll just read that for us. Mystery Babylon is both a woman, I wrote, a woman, Satan dressed in drag, I threw in parentheses, originally as Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, and later Isis, Gaia, Mother Nature, the whole goddess system, where we were talking a little earlier, men worship the goddess, the perfect, epitome of beauty and whatever. That's the first iteration of Mystery Babylon, a woman who was actually a literal physical human being, Semiramis, the wife of Nimrod, the first world emperor. And when Satan put in her mind the idea of creating the mythos of what? The dying and resurrected sun god king, which we kind of have established, laid out here in our chart, which has three components. What? The dying, resurrected sun god king, component 1. Component 2, with a virgin queen of heaven, earth mother goddess. And third, with a virgin-born sun god prince, who is the son of the sun god, who is the resurrected and dying king. And so this eventually becomes Druidism, Wicca, witchcraft, Satanism, and it also takes on the mystery form, because when biblical Christianity rose up, or the nation Israel, which preceded biblical Christianity, this whole Babylonian goddess worship system that's predicated on the dying, resurrected sun god king, the virgin queen of heaven, and the virgin-born sun god prince, who is the resurrected form of the dying sun god king, that had to go underground and be practiced in secret. Why? Because God was opposed to it. And he was sending his prophets out, like Jeremiah and Ezekiel and those guys, decrying this type of Babylonian paganism. So it became a mystery religion, which is where in Revelation we get the idea of Mystery Babylon in Revelation 17. The great Mystery Babylon. Why is it a mystery? Because it's hidden with different symbols and different signals and different ways. And we see that manifested in modern day iterations such as the New Age movement. What other movement? Freemasonry. It's all about symbols that the uninitiated can't understand. We can look at it and see a square and compass. I don't know, geometry? But it means something other than geometry. It's also symbolic of the occultic rule of Satan, ultimately. And so Roman Catholicism rises up ultimately after the church in Rome gets syncretized or sucked into the Babylonian paganism that Rome adopted from the Greeks, that the Greeks adopted from the Persians, and the Persians adopted from the Neo-Babylonians, who themselves inherited it from their great forefather, Nimrod, who was the establisher of the first great world empire system and the Tower of Babel. So, yeah, it all kind of ties together. So Mystery Babylon, as Ingrid said, is a system, but it's also a woman. And catchphrase I used when I was trying to explain this to Liz Potter a few years ago, I said, it's Satan dressed in drag. And she was like, wow, I never thought of it like that. Appearing in the form of the goddess Semiramis, or the goddess Isis, or the goddess Gaia.
These are all abominations of the earth.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, secondly, what else is it? It's a city. And we know it's a city because Dave Hunt said it was a city, and he wrote a book about it, A Woman Rides to Meet. Now, it's not just because he said it, but he laid out such documentation supporting that the city built on 7 hills is the city of Rome, because in Revelation 17 it says that this Mystery Babylon is a city who fornicates with the kings of the earth and who were drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And that's Revelation 17:6. So what city built on 7 hills controlled all the kings of the earth? And it has to be Rome, right? Rome was built on the 7 hills, and you get some bonus points if you can name them. Who knows? Aventine, Palatine.
Yeah,
That's right. There you go. I used to know them.
Yeah.
There are 5 others. But, there are other cities built on 7 hills, but none of them ever controlled all the kings of the earth, right? Rome, when it expanded out, really controlled the European kings, France, Spain, England. All of those kings had to bow down and pay homage to the Roman ruler, which is the Pope. He really was the king of this ecclesiastical system. And so, ecclesiastical meaning church-related, religious. Yeah. The book of Ecclesiastes?
Yes.
Yeah. So ecclesiastical, like a religious-based system as opposed to secular. So we know that Dave Hunt makes a really good point with his book, his scholarly work, A Woman Rides the Beast, is something I would recommend to everybody who's interested in Bible prophecy and particularly interested in the book of Revelation. It'll help you understand Revelation 17. And then we find out that it's also, Mystery Babylon, a goddess-based false religious system. And the religious system, the underpinning of that religious system will be what? Zoroastrianism?
No, sir.
No, it will be Christianity. It'll be a false form of Christianity. There is no false form of Buddhism, right? There's no false form of Zoroastrianism. Why is that, Albert?
Because they have their own deities, which are...
Well, I would say it a little. Why is there no false form of Zoroastrianism? Because there is no true form, right? It is inherently wrong. So you can't have apostate Hinduism.
You can't, no.
Right? Zoroastrianism in and of itself is wrong. So there is no true. So you can't have the false form of the true Zoroastrianism. Because there is no true Zoroastrianism. It's all Babylonian paganism with different names attached. Hinduism, Eastern mysticism, Buddhism, they're all different iterations of Babylonian paganism, which is a false goddess-based religious system. And so, to summarize, Mystery Babylon is a woman, Satan dressed in drag, the goddess that's worshipped. Even in Israel, this goddess was worshipped to God's great disdain. And in fact, the European continent is named after Europa, right? The goddess who is sort of the patron saint of the European nations. But before Europe became an entity, the Egyptians called her Isis. That's exactly right. And then, of course, Nimrod called, her Semiramis. And she became Gaia, and she became all these other names. False religious system, an actual city, Rome. Now, with regards to it being a city, there's a good argument. Now, Joseph Chambers talked about, the city of Babylon being in Iraq, and we talked about in Revelation 17 how there's a number of different verses that talks about 8 kings, and there were 7 kings, with 10 horns, and the 10 horns relate really to the metallic man. And I thought about this after we finished our teaching, but the metallic man of Daniel chapter 2. Who remembers that?
Yeah.
Here it is. Daniel chapter 2. There's an image of this metallic man, head of gold, chest of silver, hips of brass, legs of iron, and then feet made of iron and miry clay with 10 toes. The 10 toes of the statue are analogous to the 10 horns of the 7-headed beast. Dave Hunt drew a good, connection between those two. It is the 10 kings who are ruling over the earth. Nebuchadnezzar in his dream sees it as a 10-toed statue. Each one of those toes representative of a coalition of 10 rulers in the last days that unite together, and then 7 kings ruling over those 10 regions are left after 3 are cut off for rebelling against the
Can you
Antichrist.
say that again? So the 10 toes is equate to the 10 rulers, but then of the 10 rulers are 7 kings? That kind of throws me.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to summarize it for you
sorry.
in a way that you're going to understand it probably, because this was a 3-hour the lecture from last week.
I remember. Okay.
Remember last
yes.
week in Revelation
Yes.
17 it
Yes.
says, there are, what was the verse there? It says there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come.
Yes, I remember.
And when he comes, he must continue a short space. And then there was a debate amongst who are these 5
Yes.
fallen kings, Augustus,
Yes.
Claudius, Caligula. That's Adrian Rogers' view. And then Mark Hitchcock, John Walver said the 8 kings mentioned in Revelation 17 verses 9 to 11 are Egypt through revived Rome. And then you had Grant Jeffrey saying, well, no, the 7 kings are, or 7 kingdoms really, are Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome 1, and revived Rome. And then in Revelation Daniel chapter 7, verses 1 through 7, we have the image of the beast that Daniel had a dream about, a lion, who represents Neo-Babylon, the bear, Medo-Persia, the leopard with 4 heads, Greece, and the terrible beast with 1 head is Rome. And that gives you 4 beasts with a total of 7 heads, so it can become very confusing. And the good thing about going through what we went through last week in Revelation 17, we know that there is a beast, right? And the beast had 7 heads, and on his 7 heads, he had a total of 10 horns. And that's kind of 10 horns. We know that horns can be kings in the Bible. And so Dave Hunt drew a distinction, a correlation between the 10 horns on the 7-headed beast that was seen and the 10 toes on the statue when Nebuchadnezzar saw the same thing. They're both seeing the same image or the same thing, but with different eyes. Nebuchadnezzar is seeing it as a glorious, wonderful statue. It's one world empire. And Daniel and John see it as a monstrous beast, which is the way God sees it. And so Joseph Chambers has, he's written a couple of articles and, given lectures saying that he thinks that the city that is Mystery Babylon is located in Babylon, the city of Babylon in Iraq, which is going to be rebuilt. He went over there and he did a video and all that. But he actually sent, so I thought that he and Dave Hunt sort of really were at loggerheads. And Chuck Missler took the position that I take, that it's both the city of Rome presently as the religious seat of the false Mystery Babylon religious system, and then there's going to be a future actual literal city of city of Babylon in Iraq, which will be sort of the governmental economic seat of the Mystery Babylon system.
And that'll be the one that'll go dark once
I think so,
Yeah.
Steve, when it talks about Revelation 18.
the seed of the beast being, darkness
Darkened?
cast over. Yeah.
And it's interesting because when we get to Revelation 18, it says, fell is Babylon the Great.
Yeah.
Why is it mentioned twice? I think it's because it's
When
making
Rome-
reference to the original ancient Babylon of Nimrod and of the modern day reiteration of Mystery Babylon in the day of the Antichrist. And I also think it could also make reference to the fact that this city has two seats, just like the Roman Empire had two corporate city seats, right? The Western Branch was seated in. There you go. Rome was the corporate or city seat of the Western Branch of the Roman Empire, and later the Roman Catholic Church. And then in Constantinople, in Byzantium, you had the city named after Constantine, Constantinople, or the city of Constantine, which became the eastern leg or branch of the Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic Church. Why? Because he said, oh, it's so beautiful in Byzantium. I'm going to build this beautiful, luxurious. Whereas Rome was, that's where I'm doing my administrative stuff. That's where I'm collecting all my taxes and my fees. But I'm going to have this city as well. So there were two literal cities that the Roman Catholic Church and the Roman Empire were seated in, Rome and Constantinople. And I think that in the last days, this destruction of the city of Babylon, city built on 7 hills, is making reference to the literal physical city of Rome. And, it talks about trade and the guys that, and the city of Rome sits on the Tiber River. The Tiber River feeds out into, I forget it, Mediterranean, right? Okay, so it is the port city in Revelation 18 that's talking about international trade, whereas the city in Babylon, Iraq, isn't sitting on a port, and it isn't immediately contiguous to any large body of water. So we almost certainly, as Dave Hunter suggested, are talking about the city of Rome, but we're also possibly talking about the city of Babylon, Iraq. And it's interesting because just last week, it was like Thanksgiving Day, and I was reading, because I didn't have the teaching that night, and I got like a little newsletter I get from Joe Chambers. So he wrote, and basically he's taking the position that's the same as Chuck Missler's and the same as mine, that both cities are in view. He takes the position that there's going to be a rebuilt city of Babylon in Iraq, but he also has adopted the Dave Hunt view that the city of Rome is the city referenced in Revelation 17 as Mystery Babylon, and the city being destroyed. And it isn't necessarily inconsistent. In Revelation 17, the city built on 7 hills, the city of Rome. Revelation 18, when Babylon is destroyed, that may be the physical rebuilt city of Babylon in Iraq. And I'll just read what he wrote in his little newsletter to me. He said, the Catholic Church is a Babylonian institution with a Christian name. And isn't that what we were talking about last week? It is an apostate form of Christianity. There is no apostate form of Satanism. Right? Satanism is wickedness. There's no truth to it. There is no apostate form of Islam. Islam is false because it's not the truth, right? So you don't have true Islam and apostate Islam. You can have true Christianity and apostate Christianity, because Christianity, biblically speaking, is the truth. But if you take biblical Christianity and you mix in with it Babylonian paganism, you create a harlot. You create a false form of Christianity. Dave Hunt says that the Roman Catholic Church is so wicked because it sells people tickets to heaven that wind them up in hell.
Wow.
Right? And how sad is that? I mean, you think you're okay. The guy that's, the death metal rocker who's having sex with goats and has 3 different girlfriends, he knows he's doing sinful stuff, and in the quietness of his heart, he can feel guilty.
These pious Catholics.
I'm sinning.
Right.
So the Holy Spirit can convict him, and he's going to eventually feel guilty when the get high wears off, and he wakes up the next morning and goes, man, my life sucks, man. I'm tired of it. And one day he might get tired of it and turn to Christ. But if you think you're already okay, and you don't need it because you already turned to Christ, but you turn to a false Christ, you the Holy Spirit working on your heart and making you feel convicted of your sin, it doesn't work anymore. That's why Jesus said, I'd rather have you be hot or cold. If you're in the middle, that's a dangerous place to be. So this is what Joe Chambers writes about Dave Hunt's analysis of Mystery Babylon. He says, the Catholic Church is a Babylonian institution with a Christian name. He says, Dave Hunt documented the marriage of Babylon with the church. And here's a quote from his book entitled, A Woman Rides the Beast. And he goes on to quote Dave. And this is a quote from Dave's book. Will Durant, a purely secular historian with no religious axe to grind, comments upon the marriage of Christianity. He's now talking about this famous historical, history writer named Will Durant. And he's not a Christian or he's not whatever, so he has no bias. But he says this about the church. He says, the marriage of Christianity and paganism that came about through Constantine's pretended conversion and assumption of church leadership. Paganism survived in the form of ancient rites and customs condoned or accepted and transformed by an often indulgent church. An intimate and trustful worship of saints replaced the cult of pagan gods. Statues of Isis and Horus were renamed Mary and Jesus. The Roman Lupercalia, which is a pagan festival, and the Feast of the Purification of Isis became the Feast of the Nativity. How about that?
Whoa.
The Saturnalia, which is a satanic high priest celebration on December 25th, where you actually worship Satan with blood sacrifice and sexual rituals. Saturnalia was replaced by none other than Christmas celebration. How about that? An ancient festival of the dead by All Souls Day, rededicated to the Christian heroes, right? That's like Halloween. Halloween, which worshiping the dead souls, became All Souls Day.
And then All Saints Day next day.
Right, it became, the Catholic Church said, October 31st is the Day of the Dead. We'll make the next day
The Day of the Light.
the Day of the Saints, All Saints Day.
Everybody gets
Right? Okay, and then he goes on to say, incense, lights, flowers, processions, vestments, hymns, which had pleased the people in the older cults, were domesticated and cleansed in the ritual of the church. Soon, people and priests would use the sign of the cross as a magic incantation to do what? To expel or drive away demons. How many times have you seen, even in, I'll be watching an NFL game, and the field goal kicker walk on the field, and it's like a 57-yard field goal, 1 second left to win the Super Bowl,
Yep.
and the field goal kicker will go,
Quick sign of the cross. With
sign of the cross, as a magic incantation to make sure the ball goes straight. How? That has nothing to do with Jesus and
Magic
getting out of the
incantation, I
cross.
like that.
Right? Oh, now the field goal will go upright, right? And it goes on to conclude by saying paganism. Oh, I love this. This is David. It's such a way with words. He says paganism passed like maternal blood into the new religion, and captive Rome captured her conqueror. The world converted Christianity, and that's a quote from pages 203 and 4 of A Woman Rises to Be by Dave Hunt. And Joe Chambers goes on to conclude by saying Roman Catholicism has been a mixture from the time of the church's marriage to the Roman government. And that's exactly
That's Joe Chambers.
Joe Chambers, right? Paul
I'll
Creek.
check him out tonight.
Yeah. Joe Chambers, Paul Creek, spelled P-A-W, Creek Ministries. Right. So, Pastor Joe Chambers, he's out of Tuckasegee, North Carolina, in fact, I got his address right here. He's in Charlotte, North Carolina. And he has some very, very good things to say, interesting teachings on Bible prophecy. So that's what we've been talking about. And it's Revelation 17, like I said, it's probably one of the hardest books of the Bible all told to teach because there's so many different, well springs that spring off from it. The 7 kings and the 10 heads. But when you sum it, when you melt it down, Ingrid, so that when you're explaining it to somebody, you don't have to necessarily be able to say with absolute certainty whether the 8 kings of Revelation 17, 9 to 11 is Egypt, is Syria, Neo-Babylon, Medo-Persia, or whether it's referring to the pharaohs, the Syrian kings, Nebuchadnezzar, Cyrus the Great. You don't have to be able to determine that you can discuss it amongst the people. It is causing us to contend for the faith. We know it's making reference to prior kings that have come. And we know that means that there's another king that's coming who has not come yet. There was one that is. That was the Caesar, Nero. And the other has not yet come, Antichrist. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. How short is that space?
42 months.
1260 days.
Well, 1,260 days plus 1,260 days. It'll take 1,260 days to basically gain his seat of world control. And once he gains it, he'll only have another 1,260 days to rule. And that'll be the first and second half of the 70th week of Daniel, which we see kind of depicted on our big board in the back there. So, yeah, again, we have, it's a very, very complicated concept, but God is going to reward us for being able to talk about it. And now we have a conversational understanding of what Mystery Babylon is. It's no longer this, oh my gosh, when I see that word, I'm avoiding that because it's overwhelming. But we know it's also a religious system. And we know that the Mystery Babylon system started, actually, how far back did it start, really?
About the Garden of Eden.
I would say so. I'd say that's where it started. Genesis 3, the fall. And then it really got its rebirth under ancient Babylon of Nimrod. And Nimrod established the Tower of Babel and tried to unite the world together, and God had to confound the languages. But when God confounded the languages, which caused the people to scatter around the world, right? And that's where we get our ethnic groups. Let's be genetically and scientifically correct. That's not where we get different races. There aren't any different races. They were all the same race. They were all descendants of Adam, who was a descended down from Adam is Noah, and then Ham, Cush, Nimrod, all these individuals, and the Tower of Babel. These people that lived at the time of the Tower of Babel all are descendants of Noah, and he himself is a descendant of Adam, which means that they were all members of which race?
Human race?
The human race, right? So when God confounded the languages so they couldn't complete the Tower of Babel and unite the whole world together in a one world government, which Antichrist will actually successfully do, he scattered the people. But they didn't become members of different races. They were still human beings. So what we have is, for the first time, the establishment of different tribes. Different, somebody described it like he said, many clans, one tribe. We are all members of the human race, but now we have different ethnic groups because some moved to what we would call Europe, another moved to what we would call Asia, Africa, then eventually North America and South America. But they were all still human beings, so we don't have different races arising after the Tower of Babel. We have different tribes of people, and God confounded their languages so they would be forced to break out into different people groups so that they wouldn't be united together. So Satan wouldn't be able to control the whole world through just one man. By creating nation-state systems, he was able to keep Satan's power neutralized and spread out until the appropriate time. Now, at the appropriate time, God's going to allow Satan to coalesce his power, and we see it happening now.
The coalition is going on right now.
Is it going on right now?
It's
Is that what that shooting in California was about the other day?
Underway.
Get the guns out of the hands of the people, and then you'll be able to unite the world. And the people of the United States of America, they're really the last hurdle to the establishment of the one world government, because we have a constitution, we have a Second Amendment, we have arms, and some European guy or some foreign guy comes in marching and says, you're going to be part of this one world government. There might be some people that might rebel against that and say, not without a fight on our hands.
Right.
And so it has been suggested by some that these mass shootings that keep occurring again and again and again every 3 to 6 months over the course of the last, goodness forbid, it seems like the last 5 years, it just keeps happening, maybe less than that. The last 3 years, it just keeps happening again and again and again. And it was never like this before. And, it has been suggested by some that these are what you might call a false flag incident. Not that they didn't really occur, but that they're not occurring for the reason that they're suggesting that they're occurring. That these people have an axe to grind because pork was in the food or something. It's not really what's happening. What's really happening is a sort of psychological psyop to eventually wear down the minds of the Americans, because the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, for the most part, they've given up, their right to arms. They've given up they don't have the constitutional protections of the Second Amendment that Americans have, nor do they have the muscle power of the federal government that can, go to war against any other nation on earth and win. So the last hurdle are the people, Albert. The people really, still because of the Constitution, have the operative nucleus of power in the United States and controls the government. But the government is, it would seem, at loggerheads with the people in a struggle over control and power. And so we see these incidents happening, and then the media comes on, and the media, I could write the script before I even heard, I could just hit mute, and I know what Anderson Cooper is going to say. I know what the CNN analyst is going to say. This is an outrage. Something must be done. That phrase has been stopped and used over and over and over. When I turn the TV on, yes, how many seconds will it be until somebody says something must be done? Something must be done, And the president spoke, and it was clear that he believed something must be done. And what is the something that must be done? They got to take your guns away. Now, as an evangelical person, I don't have a gun. I don't feel the need for one.
Sure.
I got the Holy Spirit.
We shouldn't have guns, right?
I believe that under the Constitution you have a right to bear arms, but if you're born again, you don't really need it, right? Because you can't be killed until your ministry is over, right? If you're born again and you're walking in the will of God, right? If you're outside the will of God, whether you have a gun or not, you're in danger. But if you're in the will of God, and He has a mission for you, and He wants you to go do such and so next month,
Nothing can touch you.
nothing can happen to you between now and then. Satan could drop a mountain on your head, and God will make you come back to life again.
And if it did,
Right? He's come back from the dead, right? Because he's not until He says it's time for you to come home. Nothing can happen. So Christian doesn't have to worry about that. But I understand why Americans feel like, hey, we established this country on the right to bear arms, and we protected ourselves from foreign invaders and all that. And so there's nothing unbiblical about that. But it is, I believe, a hurdle to the establishment of the New World Order to have a bunch of guys in America who feel like they have certain rights, and they're not going to give up their national sovereignty. And that's what this really, the guns are really just sort of an outward manifestation of a deeper issue. Should we, as Americans, give up our national sovereignty and become part of the corporate one world government whole, become part of the hive mind? And so the Europeans and the Asians and the Africans and the Americans are all controlled by this 10 region, 10 governor, eventually headed by one super controlling ruler called the Antichrist. And the answer is no. And I think that God's clearly going to have to remove the church from the world before it gets much worse. Because I think what we're seeing is just the precursor to violent days that are coming. And eventually the Battle of Armageddon, World War III, and Albert.
So the first day of the 70th week is the day after we get raptured.
Well, I would say this: as we're looking at the 70th week, over to our chart here, we have the 70th week laid out here in our chart. We have the rapture that occurs. Boom. After the rapture, we know that the revelation of the Antichrist can occur. Now, does the 70th week begin, the 1260 days followed by 1260 days, begin the day after, or a week after, or a month after? We don't know for certain if it's going to be the day after, but we know almost certainly it's going to be very shortly thereafter, because the world will go into chaos once, 200, 300 to 400 million people around the world disappear overnight, then, the world's going to go into chaos for a period of time. And shortly after that, then you will have this individual, the Antichrist, come on the scene. Now, he won't be the world governor the first day up, but he'll take time to eventually establish himself during this 70th week of Daniel, which is divided out into 2 42-month periods or 1260-day periods. And eventually, he'll allow the temple to be rebuilt in Jerusalem. And in the midway point, he'll go into the temple and he'll declare himself to be God. And it's interesting because that now segues us back into Revelation 18, which is where we're going to be tonight. Once the Antichrist goes into the temple, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, so that he, as God, enters into the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Guess what he doesn't need anymore?
The false religion.
He doesn't need pseudo Christianity. He doesn't need Rick Warren standing up. Rick Warren, I'm sure, will lead a great revival after the raptures. Rick Warren and Benny Hinn and those guys are probably going to be teaming up. And it's funny because Dave Hunt was saying, notice I said after the rapture, which means we'll be gone, but they won't be.
They can have all of it.
Dave Hunt said, the day after the rapture, church is going to be more full than they ever were before the rapture. Why? Because it's going to be all the pseudo-Christians who weren't really born again. They're going to lose their mind, and they're going to be flocking to Rick Warren's church. Like, what the freak happened, man? And Rick Warren and Benny Hinn and all those guys that aren't really believers, but only claim to be Christians, are going to have to come up with new theology that sort of intertwines the New Age and Babylonian paganism, and then the government will conveniently give us the UFO explanation. Oh, well, we're going to unveil tonight at 6 p.m. Footage that we've had for the last 15 years, contact with UFOs, and we know now that the people that disappeared, no, they weren't raptured, and that's what that special, the show on HBO called The Departed, is based on. In that HBO series, been running 2 years now.
Yeah.
People disappear from all over the world, and they go out of their way to try to give it. Well, it wasn't the rapture because all these Christians are left behind in the world, but they're like hypocrites and whatever.
Yeah.
So that's really what's going to happen. You're going to have people left behind, like the pastor's going to be standing there in front of the congregation, like, "What the freak happened, pastor? You told us tithing was important, but you didn't say anything about the rapture."
Mm-hmm.
Well, no. Those people that disappeared weren't Christians. This isn't the rapture. No, it was UFOs. UFOs? Yeah, the government's going to give us a special press briefing at noon on CNN. The president's going to speak on UFOs, and that I believe, Dave Hunt believes, and several of the Bible prophecy scholars believe, that'll be the part of the lie, this great deception that Paul warns about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. That people will believe the lie because they wouldn't believe the truth of the gospel. So we go home in the rapture, and Mystery Babylon now comes to the fore. But when Antichrist goes into the temple and declares himself to be God, he's no longer just the world ruler. He's not the head of the UN. He's God, and he's worshipped. He is now the dying and resurrected sun god king, right? We've come full circle on Mystery Babylon because now this dying king, Nimrod was killed and chopped into pieces, some believe by Shem, the son of Noah, and he eventually comes back to life in the form of his virgin-born sun god, son, or prince.
Right. And this temple replaces the temple destroyed in 70 AD?
Yeah. The temple destroyed in 70 AD eventually has to be rebuilt, right?
So what kind of temple is this? I mean, there's temples on Miami Beach, there's temples in Brooklyn.
Well, when you hear about the ones in Brooklyn or Miami Beach, those are really synagogues.
Okay.
The word temple is used colloquially, the same way we say, "Hey, you going to church on Sunday?" The church isn't really a building. The church is the body of believers worldwide. What religious Jewish people do is refer to going to a synagogue, which is a house of worship. They refer to it as temple. Going to temple? Do you go to temple? They can't go to the temple because the temple no longer exists. The temple is a specific physical structure ordained by God and built on certain exacting requirements.
So this is going to be
This will be the third
They're
temple.
going to believe this guy's... Okay, gotcha.
Right. He's going to allow them to rebuild it, and they're going to be happy with him for the first 3.5 years. But then when he goes into this rebuilt temple,
Jews.
that only the Spirit of God can dwell in, the Holy of Holies, when you go in there, they're going to say, "That's an abomination. You can't go in there." And he sits on the mercy seat, and he sits on the throne in the Holy of Holies of the rebuilt temple. Then they're going to know this is the devil in disguise, and they're going to head for the hills. And at this point, he doesn't need false Christianity, the Mystery Babylon system anymore, so he gets rid of it. It says God puts in his heart to destroy the whore. And John refers to Mystery Babylon, this false religious system, as a whore because she takes Christianity and weds it to the world. Ooh, we see that happening in modern day churches. Shameful. And so what we're going to read tonight, Revelation 18, is basically what Antichrist does to this Mystery Babylon system at the behest of God, even though he doesn't know it. So let's go ahead and start us out. Ingrid, if you could, lead us off with Revelation chapter 18, verses 1 and 2.
And after these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird.
Okay, so it says twice, Babylon the Great is fallen, 2 times. And I don't think that, the Holy Spirit through that Babylon fell, or fell in the Greek, it kind of reads fell, as Babylon the Great. He didn't put it in there twice because he's trying to fill space. I think he's making reference to the ancient Babylonian system. It's going to be judged now, and the ancient Babylonian system lived through to today in a mystery form. The ancient Babylonian paganism of Nimrod exists through to today in the form of false and apostate Christianity. Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons, works-based salvation. All of that is really ancient Babylonian paganism.
Works-based salvation.
Yeah, where you go to synagogue enough, you get saved. You go to mass enough, you get saved.
Seventh-day Adventists.
Seventh-day Adventists. If you go to church on Saturday, you get saved. You on Sunday, you go to hell. The what? Where is that in the Bible? And Steve and I, not Steve, my other Steve, George, he and I were talking the other day, the guy I used to do the street evangelism stuff with, and we were talking about some of the apostasy creeping into the church and how the Seventh-day Adventists promote the idea of you go to church on Saturday, you're saved, and if you go on Sunday, that's the mark of the beast and you're going to hell because you've taken the mark of the beast by going to church on Sunday. And Steve and I have been confronted on many Saturdays in South Beach. We're out there doing evangelism, telling people about Jesus and repenting and being born again, which is what we're told to do. And there's always, every few months, some Seventh-day Adventist comes by and says, yeah, well, okay, yeah, you're telling people the gospel, but what you really need to do is get right on the day of the Lord, the day of worship, which is Saturday. You need to be going to church on Saturday. So, do you think the Lord, well, first off, would rather have us sitting in a building with a bunch of other people who are already supposedly saved, or would he rather have us out here on Saturday with a bunch of people we know are lost and going to hell, giving them tracts and telling them how to get to heaven? Of course, he'd rather have us out doing evangelism in South Beach, but they couldn't criticize us because we were preaching the gospel. But they were like, well, what you really should be doing, though, you should be in the house of worship because today is the day of worship. You need to get right on that, and then all this other stuff you're doing will count. And so I was talking to my friend George, and I said, I did a study abroad in Israel, and so I was living in the dorms in Tel Aviv University, and I go over to Jerusalem by bus and do things like that. And, I would call back to my buddies back in the United States. I was in law school at Georgetown in Washington, so I called my friends in Washington. And I noticed when I would call them on Sunday, and when they picked up the phone and answered, it would still be Saturday. They're like, well, it's Saturday here, or it's Sunday here. It's Monday in Israel. I'm in my second day of the work week because the work week begins on Sunday there. So I call them on Monday, and I'm in, my second day of the work week, but it's still the weekend in the United States. So if the Seventh-day Adventist comes to you and says, oh, well, you're not worshiping on Saturday, so you're going to hell. So you got to ask them, like, which Saturday is the right Saturday to worship? What do you mean? It's Saturday, the day after Friday. I said, well, what day of the week is it now in heaven? Right now, what day of the week? It isn't the day of the week in heaven because there's no time in heaven. And if it's Saturday here in the United States of America, in China, it's not Saturday yet, right? Because you ever, like on New Year's Eve, you turn on CNN or whatever, they have, in Beijing, we got the fireworks display, and it'll be nighttime and the fireworks will be going off. It'll be like in Thailand or, hey, look at the fireworks. But it'll only be 4 in the afternoon in the United States. Because we live in a gigantic globe that is spinning around, it's not the same day everywhere on Earth at the same time. So the Sabbath thing is nonsense. It's just another works-based form of salvation. It's climbing up into heaven another way. What is that? Paul said, if a man climb up any other way than through the man Christ Jesus, then let him be accursed.
So how do the Adventists predicate the seventh day as a Saturday?
Well, they made some arguments based on the fact that the Jews would acknowledge the Sabbath as the day of rest. And God did say, take one of the days and rest.
Second commandment.
Right, rest so that your bodies don't get worn out. But the church didn't do that. The church celebrated the resurrection of Jesus, not on the Sabbath, but after the Sabbath was over, at the beginning of the new week. So it was on Sunday, which is the first day of the Jewish week. And when I was in Israel, it was weird because, we would go to class 5 days and have the weekend off. But your first day of class at Tel Aviv University or anywhere else, in Jerusalem, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, your first day of class would be Sunday. And then your last day of class would be Thursday. And then the weekend started when you got out of class Thursday night, and then, Friday would come, and then the Sabbath began at sundown on Friday. So the Sabbath was a way of trying to adopt Jewish customs into Christianity and keeping the works of the law to get you saved. And so that's how you know it's an abomination or a cult. And the Catholics do the same thing with Mass and communion and wearing the scapular and praying the rosary and climbing over broken glass and things like that can get you saved. But you can never just pray and be saved. And so you have Jehovah's Witnesses doing the same thing. They got to go out and sell Watchtower magazine or Awake magazine. They have to spend so many hours per week out on the street propagandizing for the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Watchtower organization, or you might not make it into the kingdom. Now, they don't have a belief in heaven and hell, but they believe that you can exist in the kingdom or be annihilated. So it works.
About 2 Sundays ago, this kid has been coming to my house, So he goes, Albert, can you please come to one service to the, on 41st Street in Pine Tree?
Oh, I've been to that one.
So I went there 3 Sundays ago. I had my surfboard in the car. They mentioned the word Jehovah like 100 times, but Jesus only like 4 times.
Yeah, Jehovah's there. It's a magic mantra. It's just like doing the sign of the cross.
Yeah.
It's the magic word by which you must be saved. Except it's not a biblical word,
Yeah.
right? Because Jehovah was it's sort of a jerry-rigged transliteration of ancient Hebrew, the Yod He Vav He or Yahweh, with English vowels added to it, will give you a word that might be pronounced Jehovah, but that's not how the Hebrews would have pronounced it. So it's just a made-up word that makes it easier for us to pronounce the 4 letters of the Tetragrammaton.
Made up in the 1800s.
Yeah, exactly. So there you have it. So, all right, so Ingrid gave us the fall of Babylon, and now let's take a look and see 600, 700 years earlier, we saw the prophet Isaiah writing about the same thing. So, if you would, Phil, flip to Isaiah chapter 13 and read for us verses 19 through 22. And if you could, Albert, if you could find Jeremiah, or you or Steve, Jeremiah chapter 50. So you, Phil, Isaiah chapter 13, verses 19 through 22, which is Isaiah getting a prophetic vision of Revelation 18, 8 centuries in advance.
And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldees, excellency shall be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. It shall never be inhabited, neither shall it be dwelled in from generation to generation. Neither shall the Arabian pitch tent there, neither shall the shepherds make their fold there. But wild beasts of the desert shall lie there, and the houses shall be full of doleful creatures, and holes shall dwell there, and satyrs shall dance there. And the wild beasts of the islands shall cry in the desolate houses, and dragons in the pleasant palaces. And her time is near to come, and her day shall not be prolonged.
So what we have, what Phil just sort of read to us, was an interesting commentary about what's going to be dwelling in Babylon, after God brings judgment, one of the versions of the Bible makes reference to those creatures as doleful monsters. And it says satyrs will dwell there. And what is a satyr?
Yeah. Half man, half goat.
Yeah, so I don't think the Bible is being poetic. I think it's talking about the Nephilim, these half human, half demon, and in some cases half human, half animal monstrosities, these transgenic perversions of human DNA that Satan was able to accomplish in Genesis chapter 6, and the Bible says he will be able to accomplish again by taking human DNA, interspersing it with the fallen angels, and creating monstrosities, monsters.
Within 7 years?
I don't know what do you mean by the context of what
This
do
will
you
happen after we get raptured?
Well, so if you believe some, it's already happened, and certainly it's already happened in Genesis because
Yeah.
we know there were giants in the earth that were monstrosities that God killed in the flood, and it says, and they'll be after that, and so depending upon who you talk to, there's some belief that those things have already begun to occur again. It'll be open and obvious after the rapture, and it will be Babylon that will be the dwelling place. God is going to bring judgment down on the city of Babylon, probably the city in Iraq, annihilate it, and then in these glorious palaces where the Antichrist had his corporate world headquarters, these doleful monsters, these perverted, transgenic, half man, half goat things that aren't really human beings and can't have salvation will be, walking around in Babylon. Maybe because it's not their fault that they were created. God allows them to survive the blast or whatever, but it's believed by some that the fallen angels and the demons that control the air now and populate the whole earth during the millennial reign of Christ will be imprisoned in the city of Babylon during the 1,000-year millennial reign of Christ prior to the lake of fire being opened for business. So that's a thought. That's what we see happening to Babylon after God brings judgment down on Babylon at the conclusion or towards the end of the tribulation period of 7 years. So Jeremiah also talks about this same vision of what happens to Babylon in Jeremiah 50. So Albert, read verses 12 and 13 for us.
Your mother shall be sore confounded. She that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of the nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land, and a desert. Because of the wrath of the Lord, it shall not be inhabited, but it shall be wholly desolate. Every one that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished and hiss at all her plagues.
Okay, now skip down to verse 26 and give us that.
26. Come against her from the utmost border, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly. Let nothing of her be left.
Give me 39 and 40, and that'll be enough.
Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein. And there shall be no more inhabited, for neither shall be dwelt in from generation to generation. As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah, and the neighbor cities thereof, said the Lord, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein.
All right, so in Babylon, there are going to be these monstrous transgenic perversions.
Doleful creatures.
Owls and ostriches in ancient Hebrew were considered unclean animals, by the way. And the owl is obviously the symbol for the Illuminati and for the occult and for the Bohemian Grove guys. They've got a giant owl that they go out and do Satan worship in the Northern California woodlands. They've got an effigy of a giant owl, interestingly enough, that they do sacrifices at and they bow down before. They call it Moloch, but it's actually a gigantic owl, which is a symbol of what? The owl is supposed to be what? Wisdom. Steve, that's it. And who is really behind hidden wisdom?
Serpent.
It's the serpent. The serpent went to Eve in the garden and offered her goddesshood by way of obtaining for herself. If you get something that God told you He doesn't want you to have, what was that?
Godhood.
It was wisdom.
Well,
It was
Occultic
hidden knowledge,
knowledge.
occultic knowledge. Eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and you'll become a god or goddess. The world's first. There are no goddesses out there. You'll be the first one. And so that's how Eve was turned. So Steve, if you would, let's take a look at Revelation chapter 18, verses 3 through 6.
For all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of the earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. And I heard another voice from heaven, saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sin, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, double according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled full to her double.
Okay, so let's stop it right there. So God is telling, He's giving a message to the people at that time, and I think a message to the people of today as well. And what is that message?
Come out of her.
Come out of Mystery Babylon. What does He mean by that? I don't live in Babylon. I live in Miami Beach.
Leave the false church behind and
That's-
get with Jesus.
That's exactly what He's saying, Steve. He's not saying, leave the Kiwanis Club. He's
Right.
saying the false church system, the false religious system that you are entangled in, whether you be Roman Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren, Saddleback, all these pseudo-Christian fronts that promote some other way to salvation other than just the blood of Jesus, repenting and being born again, is a form of the Mystery Babylon system. And what we hear John the Revelator saying is that God is telling us, come out of her, my people, or you will share her plagues, because you're not really saved. And let's take a look and see some of the plagues that are coming down. Let's go to Genesis chapter 6. Genesis chapter 10. Ingrid, let's go ahead and get you in there. Verses 6 through 10.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, and Mizraim, and Phut, and Canaan. And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabbath, and Ramah, and Sabbathach. And the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And the 10?
Yeah, to 10.
And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar.
Shinar is the county. It's like Miami-Dade County. And you got Miami Beach, Coral Gables. He built all these awesome cities that became nation states of their own. This is the origin of Nimrod. Drop down a little bit here to chapter 11 and read verses 4 through 9.
And they said, Go, let us build a city and a tower.
Go to.
Go to. And they said, Go to. Let us build a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto the heaven. And let us make a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men builded. Found their language, that they may not confounded their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord there did confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth.
There you go. So that's the story of the Tower of Babel. And he said the place was called Babel in the ancient Chaldee tongue. It literally means what? Albert, you know? That's not something you really can guess.
Language?
Anybody? It literally means, it actually literally means gate of God.
Wow.
Tower of Babel was a stargate.
Yeah.
Tower of Babel was not just a tall building. It was a temple wherein gods were going to be worshipped. It was going to be sort of a metaphysical transportation system that would open a stargate. Think of it like CERN over in Switzerland. It's large hadron collider of the ancient world, where they were going to open up a portal to the dimensions to allow the fallen angels who have been cast down out of the third heaven, where God lives, to the second heaven, where the sun, moon, stars, and the sky and all of that. This is the kingdom where Satan and the fallen angels were thrown down to and told to occupy. And man had the earth. The fallen angels had the second heaven, and God had the third heaven. So they were trying to build a portal to get the fallen angels to be able to interact with men on the earth. And that's what these stargates were. That's why you have all of these ziggurats in ancient Egypt, the pyramids, and now we have the phallic sort of symbols. The largest one in the world is the Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., and then you've got a similar one in the Vatican, in Rome, and you have them throughout the world. Oh, I didn't even think about that. That's exactly right. Arc de Triomphe, isn't that just a large? It's a large phallic sort of symbol. But the Tower of Babel was a stargate, and so God confounded the languages, and the word Babel means gate of God. It then took on a second colloquial meaning, which is confusion, and that's where you get the word. What is he babbling about?
Right.
Like he's talking, but I don't understand him. He's talking, he's babbling. And that's where we get the colloquial phrase babbling. Because Babel then took on the meaning confusion of languages, meaning confusing speech. But it literally meant the gate of the gods, so that the gods could come through and interact with man. So, all right, let's see. Philippe, if you could, zip over to the second to the last book of the Old Testament, Zechariah. Just before Malachi and Matthew. And give us Zechariah chapter 5 and verses 5 through 11. And that'll be, again, the second to the last Old Testament book, a very important key prophetic book. And chapter 5. And then give us verses 5 through 11.
5 to 11. Then the angel that talked with me went forth and said unto me, Lift up now thine eyes, and see what is this that goes forth. And I said, What is it? And he said, This is an ephah that goes forth. He said, Moreover, this is the resemblance through all her. And behold, there was lifted up the talent of lead, and this is a woman that seated in the midst of the ephah. And he said, This is wickedness. And he cast it into the midst of the ephah, and he cast the weight of lead upon the mouth thereof. Then lifted I up my eyes, and looked, and behold, there came out 2 women, and the wind was in the wings, for they had wings like the wings of a stork. And they lifted up the ephah between the earth and the heaven. Then said I to the angel that talked with me, Whither do is bear the ephah? And he said to me, To build it an house in the land of Shinar, and it shall be established and set up upon her own base.
Okay, remember Shinar is code for Miami-Dade County, right? And there are different cities in it. So he said, an ephod, first off, is Hebrew for its wicker basket. Big wicker basket. And inside the wicker basket is this woman. The angel throws this woman inside the wicker basket, and he says, this is wickedness. So it's this wicked woman inside this wicker basket, and then a talent of lead, which is like a big piece of metal, is thrown on the lid. So they put a lid on the basket to keep the woman trapped in there, and they threw a talent of lead to keep her trapped in there. But then we see two women who have wind in their hair and they have wings. And they have wings like a stork, which is an unclean animal in ancient Hebrews. You couldn't take a stork into the temple and sacrifice it. It was ceremonially and ritually unclean. This is the only account I can find anywhere in Scripture where there's a reference to female angels. If you ever turn on TBN or go up to TBN, which has a outlet just north of, no, actually, they have one south of Hollywood.
Oh,
You know,
yeah,
where
Trinity,
Channel 45
yeah,
is
exactly.
located right off 595.
Exactly.
Well, if you go to their headquarters there, they have a studio there. They actually produce shows out of that studio. Everywhere you look, angels with voluptuous breasts and long hair. They female angels. They have like made of gold and whatever. These are the pagan, ancient, Babylonian sort of transgenic, Nephilim angels. Everywhere in Scripture that angels are referred to, they're referred to as men, male, masculine, B'nai Ha Elohim, the sons of God. They never make reference to, the Benoth Elohim or female angels. This is the only place where you see these angelic or spirit beings with wings that are women, and they're unclean because they have the wings of an unclean animal. So we know that this is some type of satanic perversion. This is some fallen angel disguised who's taken the female form. We talked about it a little bit earlier, fellas. How Satan he loves to take the female form and pervert it into something abominable to serve his purposes. So these two winged monstrosities in the form of these voluptuous girls pick up the wicker basket and carry this wicked woman inside to a county. What place did they carry her to? Shinar. To do what there?
Set up for base.
Eighth quarter?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It says, whither do they bear the ephod? He said, unto the land of Shinar, to build it a house in the land of Shinar. That's another way of saying temple, Albert. This is going to be the Antichrist headquarters. He's going to have his own temple. And that's why Joe Chambers believes that the city of Babylon in Iraq is going to be rebuilt. Because once Antichrist goes into the temple and declares himself to be God, he doesn't need the false Christianity, Mystery Babylon system anymore. He has his own one world religion. I'm God, worship me. And he is going to have this Mystery Babylon system, before he gets rid of it, transferred, it's believed by Joe Chambers and others, to the city of Babylon in Iraq from the city of Rome in the west, just like it happened before. It was in the west, in Rome, and then it moved eastward to Byzantium. It's in the west in Rome in the time of the Antichrist, and then a second city opens up and is moved from Rome by way of these winged creatures, and they fly Mystery Babylon, the God space system, the harlot, from the city of Rome to the new city where she's going to have her own temple and her own headquarters in Iraq.
This is like a Stephen King novel on steroids.
Isn't it right? And that's what fascinated me when I was in elementary school. The book of Revelation was like fascinating me because it was like reading comic books and sci-fi. Except my great grandmother was like insistent, no, this is all true.
Son, yeah.
This is all true. I'm like, this is true? Oh my gosh, this is exciting. And so, unfortunately, most of the pastors in the apostate Christian corporate church system, which it's my, George and I were having this conversation yesterday, my contention that if you're a modern corporate pastor, you're an employee of the government, aren't you? Because you've got a 501c3 tax-exempt corporation of which you're the CEO, and you get to take funds and keep them for yourself. So you're really an employee of the government, and you got to do certain things within government regulations. But you never have that in biblical times. You never have.
Can you help me?
Yes,
That
ma'am.
doesn't kill me. This is a
Take
simple
it,
thing.
yeah,
But
take
I
it.
just want to hear you say what we just read is relevant to chapter 18, verses 5 or 6, because.
Okay, so you're saying Zechariah chapter 5, which Phil just read,
Yeah.
says that Zechariah has a vision about 800 years ago, and he sees this female entity.
Mm-hmm.
This female entity is the goddess of Babylon. This is wickedness, he says. Not just that. This is the epitome of wickedness. This is the ancient wicked goddess system that Satan created in the Garden of Eden by getting Eve to partake of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and become the first goddess. This goddess-based system is the very nucleus of the Mystery Babylon system. And so we see this Mystery Babylon system in a place. And she's placed in a basket and carried to another place. And the other place it's carried to is the plain of Shinar, which is where the actual literal physical city of Babylon is located. And that's where the Tower of Babel was built. And, that's where Nebuchadnezzar had his palace. That's where Nimrod lived with Semiramis. And so it's relevant to Revelation 18 because Revelation 18 talks about the reiteration of ancient Babylonian paganism in the form of Mystery Babylon. But it started out, the first iteration where it became in a recognizable form was with the first world emperor, who was who?
Constantine.
The first world emperor? Come on now. You gotta take some class. You went to Harvard Business School. Come on now. The first world emperor. Goodness gracious.
What?
Semiramis' husband.
Nimrod?
Nimrod,
No,
thank
sorry.
First world
Now, because you're a bright girl now.
Just because
It's my
emperor,
fault.
I don't know. I just never thought of. I know Nimrod, but when I think of emperor, for whatever reason, I put him in high esteem.
Yeah.
Great, and I think
You're
that
just
guy
a
is
bad
like
guy.
what I just
The
clean
first
my shoes with.
attempt at a one world ruler
Okay.
In the Bible was Nimrod.
is
Okay.
Nimrod at the
Okay.
Tower of Babel. And God stopped it by doing what?
The confounding the languages and stopping
Scattered
from building
the
People
Yeah.
got scattered because their languages got
That's trying to
confounded.
create one group so that the other can manipulate.
Exactly. So, his wife was who? You don't know? Wait, hold on a
I
second.
just can't think of it
Ingrid,
right now.
You gotta be able
Not
to
in this-
operate under pressure, kid. This is,
Semiramis.
you gotta be able to operate, because I know you know this. You are as biblically astute as anybody in this room. I'm convinced of it. But you can't freeze under pressure, man. You gotta get this stuff in there, and it's muscle memory, like playing the guitar or something like that. You gotta be able to kick it. When your spotlight's on, you can't freeze up. You gotta just ignore the camera. And I remember trying my first case in court TV and having the bright camera lights on me and the TV guy there, and I was like, I'm blocking those guys all
It
out.
starts with an S.
So yeah, you gotta know Nimrod's wife is who?
S.
Jackie? No, Semiramis. So this Zechariah chapter 5 is Zechariah seeing the vision of what's going to happen in the end times. He sees that the ancient goddess system that began in the Garden of Eden got its first major base in ancient Babylon with Nimrod and Semiramis. And then it spread throughout the world. When God confounded the languages and scattered the people, guess what they took with them?
Customs.
Babylonian paganism was one of their customs. And so Babylonian paganism spread all over the world. But then when God raised up the prophets, this Babylonian paganism, which included child sacrifice, homosexuality, killing people as a blood sacrifice to the gods of the air, it had to go underground and become a mystery religion because God raised up prophets and mighty men against it. And so Zechariah is seeing in his vision that this Babylonian system, which is scattered all over the world, is now collected together in an ephod or a basket and flown by unclean female angels to her ancient ancestral homeland. She's returning home again, back to the plain of Shinar. Why? To build it and house for her. And Antichrist will use, and this is what Joe Chambers and people that believe that in the literal rebuilding of the city of Babylon in Iraq, believe that this verse supports the idea that the city that is talked about in Revelation 17, that's Babylon, isn't just Rome, but it's also the rebuilt city of Babylon. And so the plain of Shinar is a physical location. Rome is not located on the plain of Shinar. Rome is located, Iberian Peninsula, Italy, and right half continent away. So that's the correlation. Does that clarify? Does that clear things up for you a little bit? Okay, because I want to make sure that this is clear. It's important. Oh, and here we are, verses 7 and 8, kind of a key area there. Let's see. If you would, let's see. Steve, I want you to read 7 and 8 for me.
How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously. So much torment and sorrow give her. For she hath saith in her heart, I sit a queen and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her.
So that's interesting. Verse 7 of
Yeah.
Revelation 18, this woman who has flown the plane of Shinar is now feeling pretty good about
Yes,
herself.
she is.
She's running the show. She's saying, I sit a queen. I am no widow, and I will not see sorrow. Now, it's interesting she used that title to refer to herself.
Yeah.
She says she's a queen. What is she the queen of?
Heaven.
She's the queen of heaven. Mystery Babylon, I told you, is a woman, and she's a goddess. And she's a queen as a goddess, not just of the earth, but of the heavens as well. She's the queen of heaven talking to you. And this is the Holy Spirit giving you a hint as to who is being referred to in Revelation chapter 18, verse 7. It says, I sit a queen, but more importantly it says, maybe a little more difficult to understand, I am no widow. First off, what does the Catholic Church refer to their fertility goddess? Mary is referred to as Queen of Heaven. But it says, I am no widow.
That's
That's interesting because in Freemasonry, there's this whole mythos of the widow's son. And once you get in Freemasonry, you have to learn the fable or the parable of the widow's son. And I'm like, the widow's son? What in the world is that? Oh yeah, you got to weep for the widow's son. The widow had a husband who got killed, and just she and her son were left behind. And you weep for the widow's son because the widow's son got killed, and then he comes back to life. Now, what is Freemasonry reiterating or repackaging in a modern sort of mythical package? What is that?
Semiramis and Tammuz.
That's exactly what it is. It's the dying and resurrected sun god king, which is why Semiramis is a widow, right? Because her husband got killed. And the widow's son is none other than her virgin-born sun god prince of a son, who is himself eventually going to manifest himself as the son of the sun god king, through whom the dying sun god king will be resurrected and come back to life in his body. So the dying and resurrected sun god king, in Freemasonry, it's really sort of a hidden way of referring to the Antichrist being the reincarnation of Satan. Satan at one time was running the show, and then God came and put the smackdown on him and raised up the nation Israel and brought the Messiah in, and Satan was, cast down from his throne, right? Because Jesus made an open spectacle of him at the cross. But the people of Freemasonry, which are really individuals at the higher levels who are involved in occultic worship of Lucifer himself, believe that the widow's son, who is none other than the Antichrist, will one day remanifest the resurrection of the widow's husband, who is none other than Osiris for the Egyptians, Nimrod for the Babylonians, Satan for those that have taken off the rose-colored glasses. And so it's interesting that here in Revelation 18, verse 7, it makes reference to the fact, I'm no widow. Why? Because my husband's coming back from the dead in the form of his son, who is the Antichrist.
It's a clever counterfeit.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And so we see that, and I skipped over you, Albert, so I'm going to let you go back, because it says in verse 8, therefore her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she will be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. So let's see, Albert. Let's have you flip to the book of Jeremiah and camp out there for a little bit. Jeremiah chapter 7. Jeremiah comes. That's,
Isaiah.
yeah, that's after Isaiah and before Ezekiel.
Jeremiah 27.
Jeremiah chapter 7. And verses 17 and 18. Jeremiah gives us an interesting look at the Babylon. Hold on a second, Albert. When I'm talking, that's you gotta know because they're recording this, and the recording is not going to be able to record us both at the same time. So you gotta hold off and then push the go button, but wait for me to pause. Right? Okay. So you're up, but let me just give you a little introduction. What Jeremiah is doing is giving you sort of a photo shot of the Babylonian paganism that now is crept in and infected Christianity. Guess what? Satan was doing the same thing with his Babylonian paganism prior to Christianity or the church ever being established. But the word of God then was housed in the nation of Israel, and those that worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Even that, with their temple and their priests and all of their rules and regulations, were infected by the ancient Babylonian paganism of Semiramis and Nimrod and Tammuz. And Albert's going to give that to us and tell us about it. Verse 17, 18.
Seest thou not what they do in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
The children gather wood, the fathers kindle the fire, and the women knead their dough to make cakes to the Queen of Heaven.
The Queen of Heaven. Hold on a second now. We just heard reference to the Queen. I said a queen, and I am no widow. Who was that speaking? That was, the mystery Babylon spirit who was physically Semiramis, but really is Satan in drag. It's the goddess of mystery Babylon speaking. I'm no widow. And she says, I said a queen. Albert's talking to us about this queen. Who is this queen? The Queen of Heaven that the Roman Catholic Church idolizes and worships. Let's see what God has to say about this Queen of Heaven. Is it the Virgin Mary, the mother of Jesus? Albert, go ahead. Continue.
And to pour out drink offerings unto other gods, that they may provoke me to anger.
Wow. So God gets mad because in ancient Israel they had adopted the pagan practice of baking cakes to the Queen of Heaven and weeping for her. Why? Because she was the widow, and her son Tammuz was the reincarnation of her dead husband, and then he gets killed, and so they weep for Tammuz to help mourn for Semiramis' lost son, because now there's no husband and no son. Now, Albert, if you would, flip forward to Jeremiah chapter 44. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, 16 verses 9 through 19, Albert.
As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Lord, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do whatsoever thing goeth forth out of our own mouth, to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, as we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, and our princesses, in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. For then had we plenty of victuals, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, and to pour out drink offerings unto her, we have wasted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by the famine. And when we burned incense to the Queen of Heaven, and poured out drink offerings unto her, did we make her cakes to worship her, and pour out drink offerings unto her with our men?
Wow. And guess who else does that now? The Catholic Church has cakes and drink offerings. They call it, communion of the Mass. And they say when you're doing that, you're eating the body and blood of Jesus. But basically what they're doing is they're carrying on the ancient tradition of Semiramis worship, where you bake cakes to the Queen of Heaven. and you pour out drinks for it. So ancient Israel was doing that. So God condemned the Queen of Heaven as a false demonic goddess. And we see the Catholic Church doing the very same ceremonies in honoring the Queen of Heaven. Why would you call the mother of Jesus the Queen of Heaven? If you were biblically literate, you would know that the Queen of Heaven is this demonic entity in a goddess form.
It's just verb syncretization, isn't it?
It just proves that the cat, yeah.
Well,
How about that?
Synchronization.
Synchronization
Sorry.
of Babylonian paganism and modern day pseudo-Christianity. And so the magisterium, the rulers of the Catholic Church, they know what they're doing. This is a subtle way of Satan showing his hand and laughing in your face. You moron, don't you know the Queen of Heaven is a false demonic goddess? But they call the Virgin Mary the Queen of Heaven because they are really worshiping Satan dressed in drag in the form of a goddess. And so, Albert, continue on if you would in the book of Isaiah for me. 47. Isaiah 47. So Isaiah continues on, giving us sort of a vision as to what's going to happen to this mystery Babylon. So remember, God's really ticked off this mystery Babylon system. This goddess has set up basically a temple for her own worship in the city of Babylon in Iraq. And God is ultimately going to lose his patience with her and bring judgment upon her. Isaiah gives us a picture of that in verses 1 through 15, Albert.
Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Uncover thy locks. Make bare thy legs. Uncover the thigh. Pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered. Yes, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is the name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit thou silent, and get thee into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans. For thou shalt no more be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was wroth with my people. I have polluted mine inheritance, and given them unto thine hand. Thou didst shade them no mercy, unto the ancient hast thou very heavily laid thy yoke. And thou saidst, I shall be a lady forever, so that thou didst not lay these things to thy heart, neither didst remember the latter end of it. Therefore, hear now this, thou art given to pleasures, that dwellest carelessly, that sayest in thine heart, I am, and none else besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know the loss of children.
Stop right there. Now, this is clearly identifying 800 years ago. Isaiah is writing about this goddess who's saying, I'm no widow. He's clearly relating this to the same person speaking in Revelation 18, which is going to occur during the latter part of the tribulation period. Mystery Babylon fell, remember it's mentioned twice, has come back from 700 years ago, 700 BC with Isaiah, to 96 AD with John, where he sees into the future during the time of the tribulation, where the mystery Babylon goddess says, I'm no widow. And that's exactly what she said back in the days of Isaiah. I said, I shall not sit as a widow, neither shall I know loss of children. Pick it up at verse 9.
But these two things shall come to thee in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come unto thee in their perfection, for the multitude of thy sorceries, and for the great abundance of thine enhancements. For thou hast trusted in thy wickedness, thou hast said, none seeth me, thy wisdom and thy knowledge, it hath perverted thee. And thou hast said in thine heart, I am, and none else besides me. Therefore shall evil come unto thee, thou shalt not know from whence it riseth, and mischief shall fall upon thee, thou shalt not be able to put it off. And desolation shall come upon thee suddenly, which thou shalt not know. Stand now with thine enchantments, and with the multitudes of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so, be thou shalt be able to profit. If so, be thou mayest prevail. Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Behold, they shall be as stubble. The fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. There shall not be a coal to warm it, nor fire to sit before it. Thus shall they be unto thee with whom thou hast labored, even thy merchants from thy youth. They shall wander every one to his quarter. None shall save them.
What a pair, man.
Right.
Isaiah 47 and Revelation 18.
Yes, they work together
That's man.
perfectly. They syncretize together perfectly. Verse 13, what does it say? It says, thou art wearied with the multitude of thy counsel. In other words, as things start going bad for this goddess, she turns to what? Her astrologers, stargazers, monthly prognosticators. Like she's got a National Enquirer magazine and looking up, okay, under the sign of such and so, how do I get out of this trouble? Right? And it says, stand up, let these prognosticators stand up. None of them can stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee. Interestingly enough, in verse 1, Albert refers to her as the Virgin of Babylon. Now wait, in Revelation, she's called the whore of Babylon. What the term virgin, is that a contradiction? Or is that a hint as to something else? Remember, when the mythos of Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz, what was the myth that Semiramis promulgated? The literal physical woman, Semiramis, after Nimrod was killed, she got pregnant, and it was the pool boy that got her pregnant, remember? And she was supposed to be the chaste virgin.
She's a virgin birth, right?
Right? She like never had sex with a husband, and like, but how would you be pregnant then?
Yeah.
A virgin birth.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a virgin. I got impregnated by my son who's in the sun now. I got hit by a bolt of sunlight, and therefore that thing that is in my womb is the Son of God.
Wow, so it's a little sarcasm.
Exactly right. So what we have in verse 1 of Isaiah chapter 47 is a reference to the whore of Babylon being referred to by her title. Like, I'm the virgin of Babylon and the queen of heaven, and I'm not a widow. And I think that is giving us a hint that they're talking about the same woman who was the wife of Nimrod, who was really a satanically possessed female who the satanic goddess-based system, Satan dressed in drag, the goddess system had taken root and moved forward. So she's referred to derisively by God, sort of sarcastically, as, oh, virgin of Babylon, I'm about to do this to you. And she responds to God, I'm no widow, and I'll see no loss of children. And as Steve says, it ties in directly to Revelation chapter 18. So, yeah, Albert, that was great. And it's interesting because this was written 8 centuries before Revelation chapter 18. And, what was that, like 2,700 years from today, 2,700 years ago, this was written. And that's, 8 centuries before John wrote Revelation 18. So we'll get to the close here. Let's see, Steve, if you could give us 9 through 19. This is the judgment that John sees come down on this mystery Babylon system, which is now apparently re-headquartered to the city of city of Babylon in Iraq.
And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her.
Let me stop you there, though. Now that has to be a reference to, from a spiritual standpoint, what city?
Rome.
I think Rome, certainly. Now, whether kings of the earth will do business with the rebuilt Babylon and Iraq, I think you can make that argument. But there is no city on earth that has had the intercourse, spiritually speaking, with a religious city like the city of Rome and the kings of the earth. So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth her merchandise any more. The merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones and of pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet and all thyine wood and all manner vessels of ivory and all manner vessels most precious wood of brass and iron and marble and cinnamon and odors and ointments and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and beasts and sheep and horses and chariots and slaves and souls of men.
And that
just killed that list.
Boom.
Wow.
It's talking about economic things.
Mm-hmm.
So we see Mystery Babylon. Babylon, this new rebuilt city, is an economic center, but it says, it's also trading in citron, woods, horses, and the souls of men. It's got to be talking about the false religious system that had its greatest manifestation in the Roman Catholic false Christianity system. The souls of men were bought and sold for gold and silver and trinkets and indulgences paid. Right?
Yeah.
So this is part of the reason why God is destroying her, because this great city was, buying and selling, literally the souls of men. And so, merchandise of gold and silver and precious stones, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object, cinnamon, incense, wheat, cattle, sheep, horses, and the bodies and souls of men. So, verse 14 through 19.
Okay. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things, which were made rich by her, shall stand afar off from the fear of her torment, weeping and wailing, and saying, Alas, alas, that great city, that was clothed in fine linen and purple and scarlet.
I think it's interesting to note that they say alas twice. It's almost like God is symbolically saying, just as the old Babylon was destroyed, the new mystery Babylon will be destroyed. Alas, meaning, oh, great sorrow and pity for you. And then alas again.
Yeah.
So fell is Babylon the Great. Alas, alas, Babylon is destroyed. Like God is mathematically, symmetrically linking judgment on the ancient Babylon with the new Babylon that is yet to come.
And even emphasized by the second.
Yeah, it's like it mathematically lines up, right? There was an ancient Babylon of Nimrod, and it represents itself during the time of the Antichrist. So, Steve?
Okay, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls.
That sounds like the Catholic Church.
Sure does. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company in ships and sailors and as many as trade by sea stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness. For in 1 hour she is made desolate.
So the argument has been made that the ancient city of Babylon was never destroyed like this.
Mm-hmm.
It just sort of, fell into disuse, right? Like,
It's kind of right.
Nebuchadnezzar was there, and then after a while, the Persians took over, and then after the Persians took over, they kind of moved their headquarters out of the city of Babylon, and then eventually Alexander the Great came and took over the Medo-Persian Empire, and Babylon was never destroyed. It was just kind of abandoned. It's kind of like the way the city of Detroit, Michigan is. The auto industry is kind of dying out. And they're building cars in Japan, and so the people are kind of leaving the city. Nobody, threw a nuclear bomb, but certain parts of downtown look like it. Nobody, annihilated the city with a nuclear bomb. People sort of just kind of moved away. And now that the automotive industry is no longer really centered around the city of Detroit, Michigan, then people kind of faded out, and just as Detroit kind of faded from significance as an industrial giant of the world, Babylon sort of fell from significance as an economic giant of the world. But it was never destroyed. like this.
Yeah.
This is saying fire is coming down, it's going to be annihilated, it's going to hurl. So that is why people like Joe Chambers and others have suggested the ancient city of Babylon must be rebuilt for this. If this is a literal reference to the city of Babylon, it has to be rebuilt for this judgment to come down. Because this can't be a preterist sort of view of, well, this is what happened in the past to ancient Babylon. Ancient Babylon of Nimrod wasn't destroyed like this. The Tower of Babel just wasn't completed. And the Babylon of Nebuchadnezzar wasn't destroyed. It was taken over by the Persians without any bloodshed whatsoever. It was a bloodless coup, if you will. So this has to be referring to the rebuilt city of Babylon. So back to Isaiah, if you would. Ingrid, 700 years before the book of Revelation, Isaiah, again, chapter 14, gives us a picture of certain things. And verses 1 through 4 will give us Isaiah's awesome 7 centuries in advance. Well, actually 7 centuries. He's actually seen all the way through, 2,700 years in advance. He's seeing it 700 years before John sees it, though. And then John is seeing it 2,000 years before it actually happens. So 1 through 4, Ingrid.
For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for the servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve,
That's a promise being made to Israel.
that thou shalt take up this proverb, against the king of Babylon, and say, How hath the oppressor seized, the golden city seized?
Okay, ceased. Yeah, so he's saying, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city ceased. Take up this proverb or lament against the king of Babylon. The king of Babylon is a literal person, but we're going to find out when Phil reads for us the continuation of the chapter, verses 12 through 17, that not only is the king of Babylon a literal physical person, but it's also a spirit that dwells behind him. And that spirit is none other, we're going to find out, than the God of this world. Just like Babylon is a literal city, there's a spirit behind Babylon, which is the Mystery Babylon goddess worship system. And behind the Mystery Babylon goddess system is who's dressed in drag.
Satan.
Okay. So, I'm sorry. Alan.
Who's the strangers? Who's that reference to in verse 1?
Verse 1 says, For the Lord will have mercy upon Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them up their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. I think that's talking about the redeemed Gentiles.
Really? That's
In
us?
well, not us, because we're the church. We're going to be in heaven. When all of this stuff happens to Babylon, the church should already be removed to heaven with Jesus. But there'll be Gentiles that will become tribulation saints and will be martyred during the tribulation period. Some will make it through to the end and not be martyred before Jesus comes back. But during the millennium, Gentiles will come to Jerusalem and do celebrations. And, they were once strangers, from the Lord. And now these Gentiles that are born during the millennium will come to Israel, in the land of Israel and Jerusalem, to worship the Lord, because the Lord will then have set up his new temple in the city of Jerusalem. So the strangers are talking about Gentiles that have become redeemed later during the millennium. So now, later on in Isaiah, we find out who this king of Babylon is really inspired by and controlled by. Verses 12 through 14, Phil. 17. 12 through 17.
Chapter 14, Isaiah there?
Yeah.
How hard you fallen from heaven, O
That's it.
Lucifer?
Now, Phil has a little bit of an accent there, so it's, how art thou fallen? Huh? Who's he talking about? Go ahead.
O Lucifer, son of the morning, how hard to cut down to the ground which didst weaken the nations. For to us said in time half, I will ascend into heaven, and I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the head of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit.
Perfect. All Bibles, and I've done research on this since you made, all Bibles don't use the word Lucifer. They use other, morning light, morning star, but the King James Version and the New King mention, and this is the only mention of Lucifer in the whole Bible, in the whole King James, or New King James, King James. Why is that?
Well, we can talk about it, but I'm going to go ahead and let Phil finish up that little provision.
16 to
Did you get through to?
15?
Oh, okay. Through 17.
Oh, okay. There is that thee shall narrowly look upon thee, and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners? All the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in glory, every one on his own house.
So this is the spirit that's behind the king of Babylon.
Lucifer.
You know, and then we'll see in another passage where it says, make a lamentation to the king of Tyre. That's Isaiah chapter 28. The king of Tyre is a physical person, but that passage isn't talking about the physical person, the king of Tyre, in Ezekiel chapter 28. Ezekiel 28 is talking about Satan behind the king of Tyre. And here in Isaiah 14, he's saying the entity behind the king of Babylon is, as Albert points out, Lucifer, which is the son of the morning. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. In other words, he's going to take God's throne, and he's going to be God. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Now, you can't have two people like the Most High, because then he can't be the Most High. You can't have two Most Highs.
Nope.
So he wants to replace or supplant God. And then God's response will be, Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit, and they that see thee shall look upon thee narrowly, and consider and say, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house to the prisoners? So Satan's judgment is going to come part and parcel at the time of Mystery Babylon. That system is destroyed, but then Satan will be allowed to continue on through the Antichrist. And to answer your question, the different versions other than the King James Version, it is my contention, is a Luciferic attempt to contaminate the Word of God by changing out Lucifer and putting different things in there. And we could talk about the original Hebrew as Hallel is the word that's used there. But other translations other than the King James Version, very dangerous, because words are substituted out. And when those words are substituted out, different meanings are attached. So, okay, let's see. Albert, if you would, let's finish up Revelation chapter 18 with verses 20 through 24.
And cried when they saw the smoke of her burning.
Hold on a second. That's now Steve took care of that. Yeah, Steve read that verse 19, and they threw dust on their heads and cried out and weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, alas, that great city, which all the ships of the sea became rich by her wealth, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. So Steve gave us the destruction of Babylon. Now, in heaven, starting at verse 20, this is how the angels of heaven are responding.
Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. And the voice of harpers and musicians and of pipers and trumpeters shall be heard no more at all, indeed. And no craftsman of whatever soever craft he be shall be found any more, indeed. And the sound of a millstone shall be heard no more at all, indeed. And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all, indeed. And the voice of the bridegroom and all of the bride shall be heard no more at all, indeed. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth.
Wow. So now there you go. One, I think it's interesting that it says in verse 23, it was by your sorcery all the nations were deceived. The word in the Greek is actually pharmakeia. And the word pharmakeia makes reference to what? Drug usage and the occult are tied in together. So you go to a Jimi Hendrix concert in the 60s, you had to drop acid to be able to get the concert. You had to be able to understand, you had to get yourself into an enhanced state of spiritual being. Timothy Leary, who was a professor at Harvard, promoted the use of LSD, lysergic acid diethylamide, which would open the gates, which the musical group Jim Morrison later called the Doors, opened, who was it that said?
Perception.
Right, who wrote that? It was
one of them.
Jimmy
Thomas
Aldous Huxley, I think it was.
Jim Morrison.
Jim Morrison was the frontman for the group called the Doors. But the rock group The Doors, took that name from a book that was written by Aldous Huxley called Opening the Doors of Perception, that suggested by using certain types of psychotropic drugs, you could actually see into the spirit world. And they were right. And that's why God, in the garden, cut off connection between Adam and the spirit world, so that we couldn't have another Luciferic deception. The Antichrist now, the Antichrist spirit in the world now is using what? Drugs. When we have the, what's the festival? The Winter Music Fest, Ultra.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody down at Ultra is dropping, ecstasy and different mind-altering drugs, or the lights and the sounds of the music don't make sense to you. But when you take the drugs, it opens the doors, and you have these metaphysical experiences that kids are paying $200 or $300 per ticket to get in and have. So it's being made clear here that Mystery Babylon uses drugs to deceive the nations. It's drugs and the occult combined together. And it says, interesting, in her was found the blood of the prophets and the saints and all who were slain on the earth. Dave Hunt uses that to make a good point that far more Christians have been killed by the Roman Catholic Church, headquartered in the city of Rome, than by all the Muslims in the world combined. So again, Mystery Babylon, both the city of Iraq, or the city in Iraq, and the Roman Catholic Church headquartered false religious system that's consolidated together towards the end. And, it was a little interesting that at the beginning it says, Albert said in verse 20, that when Mystery Babylon is finally destroyed, in verse 20 it says, rejoice. Like, God is now giving them permission to rejoice, O heaven, and holy apostles and prophets. For God has avenged you on her. Now, these are the people that are already in heaven, and Steve's going to tell us who those people were. Because we're going to flip over to Revelation chapter 6, verse 9 through 11, and Steve will tell us who are those people that are being given permission. Okay, now you can cheer.
Right. It's like you said once, Herb. They're up there saying, "Come on, God, when are you going to avenge for us? When are you going to avenge for us?"
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly.
Just hold on, Michael. Wow, hold on.
Oh, so you remember
Stealing the thunder.
Stealing the thunder. That's our brother. All right. Revelation 6, verses 9 through 11.
Okay. And when he opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God and for the testimony which they held. And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? The white robes were given unto them, given unto every one of them. And it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season until their fellow servants also and their brethren that should be killed as they were should be fulfilled.
So basically, you have under the throne in Revelation chapter 6,
Mhm.
all of these martyr tribulation saints who have been killed by the Antichrist and his false mystery Babylon religious system when they refuse to take the mark of the beast and bow down and worship the image of the beast. They're killed, and their souls immediately go into the throne of God. And they're like, how long, O Lord, do you avenge us our blood? And he says, rest a little while longer until the full number of your brothers down on the earth must be martyred, are completed. So there's others there that haven't been killed yet, but are going to get the martyr's crown, because that's going to be a great honor and a reward when you get to heaven if you got killed by God's enemy. And now in Revelation chapter 18, we find out verse 20. Now the number is complete. Now you guys can cheer. And now we see the rapid conclusion of the 70th week of Daniel, which we'll get to in the week after that. Next week we're going to do a little holiday party, and then the week after that, are you guys going to be on Christmas?
Oh no, my family's coming.
So it'll be two weeks from
3.
3 weeks from today.
Year.
Oh,
We'll
wow.
find out
Okay.
what's coming next.
Oh, then that's New Year's too.
Next year.
Oh, is that right? Goodness forbid. Wow. It looks like, unfortunately for those out in Cyberland, it looks like we might have a little bit of a hiatus, because next week you got the holiday, little Christmas party, then you got
Christmas, then the 2nd of December, of January.
2nd of January. This is a Thursday. So January, it looks like,
So
Man.
the 9th,
The 2nd of January.
Not until like
no,
the-
January the 1st, then the 8th. is
so when is the next date then? Let's take a look.
January.
8th of January. Sounds
8th January.
So let's see. So today is the 3rd. I can't believe that. Let's take a look and see. Next week we're gonna have just our little Christmas holiday church gathering dinner, and then the week after that will be the 17th. Why wouldn't we do it on the 17th?
Because we have the family.
Oh, on the 17th you have people.
A lot of people are being in the house.
Oh, and on the 17th. Okay, so 17th, 24th, and 31st you'll have family. So then it looks like the next one will be the 7th. So, so if the Lord doesn't come back in that large gap of time, we will pick up. Now that we've gotten to the destruction of Mystery Babylon, we start the new year out with none other than the return of the King in Revelation chapter 19. So for you guys out in Cyberland, you have to watch some of our previously recorded. Go back and re-review the book of Revelation. That should give you, over the course of the next, 3-4 weeks? Wow, that's our biggest gap ever. 4 weeks, go back and review the book of Revelation. And if there's a change in scheduling for the 17th or anything, I'll let you guys know. But as of right now, it looks like our next time live will be on January 7th in the new year, and we will pick up then with Revelation chapter 19.
And Sunday is the first night of Hanukkah.
Is it?
good.
Okay.
Sunday.
Festival of Lights, which is a
Festival.
biblically authorized holiday.
Jesus.
So, with that, Albert, why don't you close us out in prayer, man?
Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Lord. You said where 2 or 3 are together, you hear. Lord, thank you for the importation of this word through our most knowledgeable Herbert Walker. Thank you, Jesus. Bless everyone here, Lord. Lead them home safely tonight, safe and sound. And Jesus, let us have productive, safe, healthy week coming up. And bring us back next week, dear Jesus. Bring it back safely, wholesomely, and together as a family where we can share your word, your blessing, your thoughts, in your holy name. Amen, amen.
Amen.
All right. So, thank you so much.
Jude, thank you.